Hello and welcome to Filling the Sink, a podcast from Catalan News. I'm Lorcan Doherty and today we're talking about the case of Fatima Ofkir Reyes. In the summer of 2017, Fatima, then 18 years old, made a big mistake. The young Catalan woman was arrested in the Sultanate of Oman, accused of drug trafficking. She's currently serving a life sentence in prison there, but desperately wants to return home. On today's podcast, we'll be hearing from Fatima's mother, Rosario, and here with me in the studio to explain the case are Cristina Tomàs White and Guifré Jordan. Hello to you both.
Hi, Lorcan.
Hi, Lorcan.
So, Cristina, tell us a little bit about the background of this case.
So it dates back to the summer of 2017. At the time, Fatima was only 18 years old, and she had traveled to the Middle East, to Oman. And when she arrived there, she realized that she didn't want to go on with the scheme that she'd been talked into participating in, and had actually tried to back out of it. But it was already too late because she was staying at a hotel in Muscat, and in the middle of the night, 12 Omani police officers, all armed, came and arrested her, and they found 7 kilograms of morphine in her suitcase. From the very beginning, she tried to cooperate with authorities there to give them as much information about the people who had talked her into doing this, to smuggling the drugs back to Europe. But
it was not enough
clearly
in order to convince Omani.
Yeah, the country has very
authorities.
strict drug laws.
Yeah, for example, I was just looking, the UK foreign travel advice for Oman is that there's zero tolerance for drug-related offences, and the penalties for importing, trafficking, smuggling and possession of even residual amounts of drugs are severe. So she cooperated, but she was convicted, Guifré?
So yeah, she did. She was convicted of drug trafficking, and she was sentenced to a life sentence, let's say, which is, well, the worst scenario for her. Although we recently talked to the Omani Justice Ministry, and they clarified that whenever you are sentenced to life, you don't have to spend the rest of your life there, but a maximum of 25 years, in fact, let's say. So life sentence is equal to 25 years.
Okay.
Maximum.
Still a long time.
It's a long time. It's not the whole life, but it's a very long time indeed.
And on top of the length of the sentence, obviously the fact that she's so far from home, we're going to hear from her mother very shortly, but she's in Oman, the southeastern tip of the Arabian Peninsula. Very different culture, different language. The Sultan there, it's a hereditary monarchy, and the Sultan has the sole authority to enact laws through royal decrees. That is Haitham bin Tariq since January 2020. It does have some human rights issues. Amnesty International, for example, have talked about, there is the death penalty there, that women continue to face discrimination both in law and in practice, and that the government has detained and prosecuted activists and demonstrators as well. Cristina, last week you went to visit and talk to Fatima's mother.
Yeah, I did. It was actually probably one of the most difficult interviews I've ever had to do. She's very upset. She's not doing well. She really misses her daughter.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's have a listen to how you got on.
I met up with Rosario Reyes, Fatima Ofkir's mother, on a chilly Saturday afternoon in L'Hospitalet, a working-class city that neighbors Barcelona to the south. To say Rosario is desperate to get her daughter back is an understatement. Fatima might be 7,000 kilometers away in a women's prison in Muscat, but Rosario's day-to-day life revolves around her, thinking about how she must be doing, how she's feeling, how to get her out of there. But first things first, I asked Rosario how it got to this. How does a teenage softball player from L'Hospitalet end up serving a life sentence in Oman?
Yo me divorcié, nos divorciamos, tuvimos una separación con el padre.
The question's a painful one for Rosario. I fell into a deep depression after my divorce, she tells me, among photos and reminders of her daughter in her otherwise nearly empty apartment. In debt and overcome with worry, for a space of 6 or 7 months, it got to the point where she could barely get out of bed.
No supe estar ahí como madre.
I didn't know how to be there for Fatima as a mother, she confesses. She says she didn't know what Fatima was up to or who she was hanging out with until the day she got a call informing her daughter had been arrested in Oman, making her the youngest Spanish national detained abroad. Rosario's convinced her daughter was taken advantage of for being what she calls vulnerable. And Fatima did try to back out of the drug smuggling scheme, her mother and her current lawyer say, and cooperated with Omani authorities once she was arrested. Rosario says she has messages from her daughter telling her she didn't want to go through with it, but it was already too late.
Y una vez allí llegó y se arrepintió viendo la situación que había, era demasiado tarde.
Rosario's first step was to hire someone who she selected from a list of lawyers the Spanish embassy in Oman provided her with to defend her daughter in court. According to Rosario, however, he'd make false promises about bringing Fatima home in a year's time, all the while asking for more and more money but not showing up in court.
Porque este señor no se presentaba a ningún juicio, a ninguno.
Fatima was first sentenced to 8 years behind bars, but when the Sultan died in January 2020, his cousin came to power and introduced even harsher penalties for drug trafficking. This means Fatima will, if nothing changes, have to serve a life sentence, which in Oman is at most 25 years. Rosario also believes she's received such severe punishment because she's a woman in a country where women have few rights.
No se puede defender.
At this point, Rosario tells me, a new lawyer came into the picture, pro bono, who decided to go public with the case. According to him, it's unlikely Fatima would have spent time in prison if this had happened in Spain, because she didn't go through with the smuggling and tried to help the police.
Descubren que
They also revealed the shocking news that her first lawyer, the one she'd found through the Spanish embassy, does not actually have the right to practice law in Spain, at least not, as they claimed, during the time of her trial, and they think it's improbable that he ever had the right to practice law in Oman. From what they've been able to gather from Fatima, he only went to 5 of 15 or so hearings, and he also told Rosario the case could still be appealed when it couldn't. Rosario's only hope now is an inmate transfer treaty between Spain and Oman, especially as her daughter is not eligible for a royal pardon. A letter Rosario sent to King Felipe of Spain following his 2020 visit to the country to meet with the new sultan has had no discernible effect either.
si el gobierno y el ministerio no actúan.
She can't help but get frustrated after what she describes as years of inaction. The government and the embassy either aren't doing enough to secure this treaty, she says, or they haven't informed her of any progress that's been made.
Va a hacer que mi hija se quede allí.
In the meantime, Fatima is losing faith, and Rosario fears neither she nor her daughter will be able to make it another 20 years.
Es hora y el momento porque Fátima no está bien.
Fatima is not doing well, Rosario said.
Fátima estaba
Before, I was trying to cheer her up, but now she's given us an ultimatum. She needs a prisoner transfer treaty because she can't put up with this any longer.
Fátima no aguanta más.
Our thanks to Rosario. Well, just listening to that, she's been through so much. I mean, first to learn that the sentence is going to be 8 years and that's enough to deal with, and then to find out, no, it's actually going to be a life sentence of, 25 years. And yeah, Fatima obviously being so young at the time, actually the youngest Spanish national imprisoned abroad at the time as well, at least. Cristina, while you were there, Rosario showed you a letter just recently arrived from Fatima.
Yeah, she did. She actually told me that she hadn't been able to finish it because it was so difficult for her.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising. It's quite, emotional reading it, even if you're not connected at all to the case. So, God knows what it must be like for Rosario trying to get through it. Fatima wrote, "Hola, mama. Hi, mommy. How are you doing? I'm trying to be strong, but it's hard. The hardest thing is I've accepted this place as my home and my family. It's hard for me to know that I'm a woman now in this place, and I don't know when I'll get out. I want to leave. I want to live a normal life with its problems and virtues, but what I have here isn't a life. It hurts to hear false promises in this place, wherever they're from." And she goes on and she finishes as well saying that, "I love you all very much, despite that now I'm a different person and broken, especially broken on the inside. Thank you, and give my thanks to the people who are still with me and know that I'm alive. Thank you. And she signs it, Fatima Ofkir. She wrote it at 4:30 in the morning, 17th of November, just a couple of weeks ago. And in brackets at the very bottom, I still have 1% hope. And you said Rosario didn't get to the bottom. I hope she saw that, because that's like a bit of light, in the kind of darkness.
It's very gloomy.
Yeah.
It's very gloomy, and it's clear that her suffering is quite big. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she also said, I didn't read it out there, but she also said she's already thinking, well, I've done 5 years of the sentence. Maybe I can do another 20. It's it's not that bad almost, she's already she's already in that headspace.
And she's also saying that, she isn't going to be reaching out as much just because it's so hard for her to hear all these promises of being, getting out of there when she might not for another 20 years.
Yeah. Guifré, we heard there from Rosario earlier that the only hope now is some kind of treaty between Spain and Oman.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the main hope of Rosario and of Spanish foreign affairs authorities too. So shortly after the case was made public by Rosario and her current lawyers in December 2020, the Spanish government said that they were seeking to sign a transfer treaty between Spain and Oman, because there's none. So there are no rules applying to this situation. So you really need a treaty. Some sources from the Spanish Congress that are involved in the Committee of Foreign Affairs have told us that this treaty is not going to be only for Fatima, but they want like a full legal framework for this sort of situations. And we've even been told by other sources close to the family that Oman already has a draft of this treaty made by Spanish authorities, and no response have been delivered yet. Yeah, I mean, everyone is at the expense of Oman's will,
Yeah, and I mean, it's a delicate topic. It's high level diplomacy. I guess these things aren't easy to get through.
And actually, on that note, this parliamentary sources and some others too have told us that negotiations, talks, and everything involving this possible transfer treaty that would enable Fatima return and serve her time in jail in Spain have to be discreet. They don't want to talk about it because that could be counterproductive. So that's something they don't want, obviously. We also have to say that signing a treaty like this is not easy. It takes time. It takes a lot of time. We've talked to a professor, a specialist in this field of international criminal law and so on. It's Diego Boza, professor of criminal law at the University of Cádiz in southwestern Spain. And basically what he said is like the first thing you need is willingness in both parts. And he doesn't see any motivation why Omani authorities would need this treaty,
Okay, Spain wants Fatima to come back here. Oman, there might not be any Omani prisoners that they're wanting to transfer in the other direction.
That's on the one hand. On the second hand, they could give a negative message for their politics.
They want to look tough. They want to use her case as a deterrent.
So imagine if public opinion in Oman hear that people who've been caught drug trafficking, no matter the circumstances that Cristina explained before, they can be released or they can be
sent back home.
Go back home. That would be negative for their tough policy in this field. So he said it's going to be difficult, and Spain's diplomacy needs some other argument to persuade Oman that can be absolutely unrelated to this, but it can help
these negotiations.
These negotiations, exactly.
And there was some talk of a potential pardon.
Yeah, actually, Justice Ministry in Oman also told us that there is a possibility of a pardon. In general, they weren't talking about this case. We have to make this very, very clear. And it is up to the Sultan to decide who gets a pardon. And he usually makes this decision
on Oman's National Day, which is November 18th. Also on Muslim holidays, important Muslim holidays, he's also been known to pardon prisoners. But on November 18th, we checked, and there was no information about whether she had been
there
pardoned.
were like some kind of 65
foreigners,
foreigners who've been released or pardoned, but Fatima doesn't look to be in this list. But despite the fact that the Sultan is pardoning now and then people, sources very close to Fatima's case have a very gloomy perspective, let's say, because according to them, a woman has never been pardoned in Oman, as far as they know, which makes things even more complicated. And also in general, you need to serve at least 3/4 of the whole sentence to be eligible to this for this pardon.
Okay. And if hypothetically, Fatima, there was some kind of agreement and she came back, would she have to serve her time in prison here, or how would it work?
Yeah, that's a good question. We asked that to this professor, Diego Boza, and what he said is it depends on the treaty, obviously, but the standard in this sort of treaties, and for instance, the transfer treaty between Spain and Saudi Arabia, which is bordering Oman, it establishes that any prisoner sentenced in one country has to serve the full length of the sentence in the receiving country, in the other country, but under the prison circumstances of the receiving country, let's say. So, in here we've got regular permits, regular releases under some conditions. So she could potentially be eligible to that. In Oman, she's not at the moment.
So she could be serving a sentence, but she might be out at the weekend, for example.
Exactly. Or the whole week. There are permission. There are permits that include full time at home.
Okay. Well, we're away from that at the minute. What assistance, Cristina, do we know has Fatima been receiving? Obviously, she's so far from home. We know her mother hasn't been able to travel.
Right.
Does she see anyone?
Well, people from the Spanish embassy in Oman go to visit her around once a month or so. We got an email from Spain's foreign ministry towards the end of September that says that they'd visited her 32 times since she'd been arrested. They possibly visited her a couple times since then. They also told us, quote, that the foreign ministry continues to promote the negotiation of an agreement, end quote, with Oman.
Okay.
So they're promoting the negotiation of an agreement.
Yeah. Rosario as well even wrote to the King Felipe of Spain, because I suppose she's trying all available channels.
Yeah, and the king himself has traveled to Oman and has ties with the royal family there. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why she tried to see if they could do anything for her.
But I guess nothing has come of that.
No. She got a letter.
She didn't get any reply, did she?
She got a letter saying that they'd sent it on to the foreign ministry.
Right. Okay. Go for the official channels. And what about in terms of are we seeing politicians kind of getting involved in the case at all?
Well, when it was first made public in December 2020, the Spanish government shortly afterwards said that they had been working on achieving this transfer treaty with Omani authorities. Politicians from Catalonia also raised this issue in the Spanish Congress Foreign Affairs Committee. And actually, one of the MPs who mentioned this in August 2021 in this committee got a clear response by the Spanish Foreign Ministry along the lines of, I will brief you about it in private. Right. We have to be very discreet in the negotiations with Oman.
Okay. This is a common theme that we've seen here.
Absolutely. Yeah. MEPs from Catalonia also sent a letter to the European Commission about it. They got a response too in January 2021, basically saying that this is an issue between Spain and Oman, but they will provide any assistance that Spain requests. But, from January 2021 or so...
Not much has changed. I was in touch with a spokesperson from the European Commission just over a month ago, and they said that essentially the same thing.
The same, right? Yeah.
They're aware of the case, but it's kind of the ball's
it's up
more
to Spain.
It's up to Spain. It's not
hasn't been in the media for the past 2 years or 1.5 years, so...
And this has been something that's really difficult for Rosario because she feels that she's been forgotten. She kind of swung from saying that people aren't doing anything, that authorities aren't doing anything to help her daughter, and then she was like, oh, well, maybe they are. I just haven't been informed.
Yeah, it's the uncertainty as well.
She doesn't know.
Unbearable, isn't it? As we do hear any developments in Fatima's case, we will, of course, keep you up to date on catalannews.com. Time now for our Catalan phrase. What's it this week, Cristina?
Fe lorni.
Fe lorni. I have no idea what that means.
So it's to turn a blind eye, to pretend not to notice something.
Okay.
I'd say Fersalorni though, but
Fersalorni.
it's okay. Fersalorni is the official way.
Dictionaries back me here.
Correct. That's
Oh,
true.
there we go. Right, so fair lorni or fair say lorni if you're Guifré. And literally, what does it mean to do the orni? What's the orni?
Horny doesn't mean anything.
No,
it's
doesn't-
only
it's
used
not.
in this expression.
Oh, I'd say so. I never used it outside this Ferlorni expression. No?
Okay, there we go. Fair lorni. And that's us for today. Thank you very much for listening. If you want to get in touch with us, our email address is fillingthesink@acn.cat. Huge thanks again to Rosario Reyes for speaking to us. We really appreciate it. And my thanks to the both of you as well, Cristina and Guifré. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
We're back again next Saturday with another episode of Filling the Sink. Until then, from me, Lorcan Doherty, and all of us here at Catalan News, bye for now. Adieu.